Good morning, everybody. Please join your seats. So I'm very happy to welcome you all to this first session on day 3 on the Sustainable Cities Day, where we're going to talk about local action, global impact towards a global stocktake on SDGs localization. And this session is co-hosted with UN Habitat and Local 2030. And that session is also special in the sense that it's a joint session between the OECD Urban Days and the OECD Working Party for Territorial Indicators. And the chair of this working party is also with us, and then she will intervene during this session. I probably don't need to tell you about the importance of the SDGs, and we will hear more about that. And in the context of the Urban Week, we are looking specifically at the role that cities and regions can play in promoting the SDGs, in localizing the SDGs, and I think this role is more important today than ever, and we'll talk more on that during that session. Also, this session will kickstart the global stocktake on SDG localization, which is a joint initiative between the OECD and UN Habitat, and you'll also hear more about that. And with that, for a start, I give the floor to Aline Mata from UN Habitat, who will say a couple of words and then also introduce a video.
Thank you very much. So good morning, everyone. Welcome, a warm welcome to all of you on behalf of UN Habitat and Executive Director of UN Habitat. I would like to welcome you. It's an honor to be here today, co-hosting this important event together with our valuable partners that are the OECD. It's equally an honor for us to be surrounded by distinguished speakers and participants. So thank you all for joining us today. So by now, I believe we are all in agreement of one fundamental truth. There is no sustainable development without localization. Local action is not simply complementary to global goals. It's the engine that drives them forward. When cities and territories are empowered, when mayors and local leaders have the tools and resources they need, the SDGs comes to life in communities, in neighborhoods, and in the everyday lives of people. As part of this effort, UN Habitat and OECD have once again joined hands to develop what we hope will become a milestone in our collective effort to advance localization, the global stocktake on SDGs localization. As you will hear now, directly from our executive director, this initiative is more than just a report. It's a collaborative effort to consolidate and elevate the wealth of experiences, lessons, and innovations emerging and enhance, of course, contributing to national, local, and regional governments around the world. So with this SDG Summit in 2027 on the horizon, the global stocktake on SDG localization will provide the evidence and the data, making a case for localization as the key approach to deliver sustainable development. And this will also contribute to the global dialogue on the post-2030 agenda. Without further delay, let me introduce you the UN Habitat Executive Director's video message for her welcome words to you. So please, I just ask OECD colleagues to play it. Thank you very much.
Excellencies, honorable guests, distinguished delegates, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. It's an honor to address you today at the OECD Urban Days as we look together at how to accelerate local action through this exciting joint OECD-UN Habitat initiative, the global stocktake on localizing the SDGs. The partnership between UN Habitat and OECD has been instrumental in advancing sustainable urbanization and SDG localization. Last November, at the World Urban Forum 12 in Cairo, we marked a new chapter of our shared commitment towards sustainability through a renewed Memorandum of Understanding. This agreement builds on years of collaboration on key issues such as urban-rural linkages and national urban policies. The latter by embedding the SDG targets has greatly helped countries effectively translate global goals into actionable local strategies. Today, we bring this effort a step forward as we jointly present the global Stocktake on localizing the SDGs. The Stocktake aims to provide a comprehensive review of a decade of SDG localization, creating robust evidence and delivering actionable recommendations for continued work on localization and multi-level governance towards the 2027 SDG Summit and beyond the endpoint of the 2030 Agenda. The global Stocktake addresses critical governance challenges, such as fragmented data, limited capacities, insufficient financing, and weak coordination. By establishing a goal measurement framework, conducting detailed analysis of pioneering cities, and exploring future scenarios using AI-driven analytics, it empowers governments to overcome these barriers and effectively localize the SDGs. This initiative complements UN Habitat's ongoing operational support to cities and national governments through SDG Cities and the partnership platform on localizing the SDGs, recently launched with the Italian Ministry of Environment and Energy Security. The findings of the Global Stocktake will also feed into the work and mandate of the Local 2030 Coalition, which UN Habitat co-chairs on behalf of the UN system. Dear friends, we call on you to join and support the Global Stocktake on localizing the SDGs. For it to be successful and meet its ambitions, we need to up our political, financial, and technical collaboration. Together, let's invest in local action today to secure global sustainability tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. After this important message from UN Habitat, I have now the pleasure to give the floor to my colleague Aziza Akmush, who's going to tell us about the OECD work on the localization of the SDGs, how we started, the progress we have made, and also now telling us about how the next phase will be shaped, where we are entering in this global Stocktake that we just heard about. Aziza, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rudiger, and welcome to all of you, and a special welcome to the delegates from the Working Party on Territorial Indicators. Needless to say how instrumental you've been, and in Rudiger's team also, in bringing more granularity from a data and statistical standpoint into this conversation on the SDGs. What I wanted to do, building on Ana Claudia's remark, is to give you, and maybe we can put the slides on the screen. Thanks. Give you a bit of background of where we're coming from and how we've been working at the OECD on this localization agenda for the past few years. And the very first thing I wanted to say is that when we started this conversation with the delegates of the Working Party on Territorial Indicators and the delegates of the Working Party on Urban Policy, that basically put around the table those in charge of producing local and regional data in national statistical offices and those in charge of urban policy matters, there was a very strong convergence that local and regional governments were actually instrumental in deploying that 2030 agenda, and that even if that was not designed originally for local and regional governments, and even if the SDGs are actually primarily holding national governments accountable that have to go, every year and say where they stand and whether they're on track or not on track, there was a very logical conviction somehow that mayors and governors at the local level could use this agenda as a way to rethink their public policies, as a way to rethink the way they allocate budget, the way they prioritize investments, because, and we have a few mayors around the table here, including champions from the onset of this program, they don't wake up in the morning saying, I'm going to implement the SDGs, but they wake up in the morning with very hot potatoes to handle, from, housing affordability to traffic congestion, to air quality, to solid waste management, to supplying drinking water and sanitation, to advancing the gender agenda, inclusion and inequalities at large, because this is where most people actually work and live, and most of these inequalities are manifesting. So there was really this alignment of planet that the 2/3, 65% of those 169 targets cannot be achieved without local and regional governments, but there were two blind spots somehow, which as OECD we have tried to address. The first one is that there was a huge data gap, if I can say so, in terms of where cities and regions stand vis-a-vis each of these 169 targets, how they perform vis-a-vis their national average, and how they perform also vis-a-vis their peers in other cities and regions of OECD countries. And that's why with Rudiger, his team, and this platform, we have developed this localized indicator framework that provides and has provided for the last 5 years at least 130 indicators that measure the distance of 600 plus cities and 600 plus regions from 46 OECD and partner countries for each of the SDGs, not only SDG 11 that has a specific focus on cities and communities, but all 17 SDGs where we believed and we demonstrated that there is a very strong place-based dimension. So if you are not aware of this tool, do navigate. It's a very user-friendly online visualization tool where you can just enter the name of your city or region if you're part of those 46 countries and have a really nice visualization of where you stand. The second thing that this helps us do is to now, with a bit of distance, track progress over the past 5 years. And there's significant work that was done also by Claudia and the geospatial lab team to see whether there's been progress or whether we're off track or we're even going backwards somehow on some of these SDGs. And of course, the data there can be alarming on the one hand, because we do see we are far off track at subnational level as we are at national level vis-a-vis this agenda, but it's also a way to prompt somehow further political support and action. So that was the first blind spot, you know, the data, the granularity, and how we show in a sort of evidence-based way, which is the DNA of this place, you know, where local and regional governments stand. And there was a second blind spot, which was very important for us, which was also to document in a very practical way how local and regional governments are, you know, embracing that agenda and using it, as I was saying earlier, as a tool for policy making at the very local level. And this is where we're very proud to launch today, in particular, the latest report from this generation of place-based policy dialogues on the Basque country. We'll have in the second session the opportunity to hear from our colleagues from the Basque country, and we're happy to have the ambassador of Spain to the OECD with us today, which is the example, the additional example 11 on these localization efforts. And for each of these policy dialogues, and I also want to thank Beaune and Kitakyushu and Paraná and all the cities that have opened their books and the regions that have opened their books and gone through this exercise, we are basically providing an outsider view of the socio-economic and environmental performance of the city or the region, of course, and its distance vis-a-vis the SDGs, but also very tangible evidence that can be, I hope, scaled up and replicated on how this localization efforts is delivering better outcomes for people and for citizens. So really on the qualitative side, if I can say so, a full generation of analytical pieces that I hope will be inspirational for many of you. And this takes me to the last part of the presentation, which is what's next on the global stocktake. There are a number of lessons that can be taken from this decade of the SDGs. And of course, we are in the final 5 years, so to say, and in the face of also thinking or rethinking what may come next, including within the UN system. I think the first very good piece of news is that the localization movement has largely accelerated. We have today, and our colleagues from the Joint Research Center in the European Commission are documenting that in a very interesting way, over 330 cities and regions across the globe that have completed what we call voluntary local reviews, mechanisms whereby they're translating into their local context these global goals, and they're also somehow showing how they are performing and using that as a mechanism to raise awareness and embark their citizens in the journey. We also see, and that's a positive piece of news, that national governments are actually taking notes, and that in 2023, 1 in 3 countries referred actually to SDGs localization in their voluntary national review. And we were only at 16% just 2 years before. So we see that this acknowledgement of the critical role of cities and regions, not only because of their public policy prerogatives, but also because of their political capital and capacity to build trust and their proximity to citizens and their investment prerogatives, is translating more and more into this shared responsibility and multi-level governance that we are advocating for at the OECD. But the last point that I would like to flag is actually the persistent challenge that we have faced or seen pop up in all these dialogues over the past few years. And that's related, of course, to financing. The barrier in terms of accessing to finance and funding that is required to implement urban development projects for cities in particular. 2/3 of subnational governments actually cite the lack of financial resources as their top challenge, and many of them face constraint not only on the fiscal autonomy side, but also in terms of limited access to long-term investment. And there's been a lot of work done with the SDSN Global Commission on SDGs Urban Finance, for example, to see how to unlock the potential of innovative mechanisms such as sustainability bonds, land value capture, and others that can really accelerate further this trend. So I draw your attention in particular on tomorrow morning's session that will all be about how to finance the cities and regions of tomorrow. So I let you hear really with this open conversation on the global stocktake. We are, as Anna Claudia said in her video, now at the stage where we would like to really look back at the last decade, take stock, document the data, the progress, the good practices, but also use this as a lever to shape the ways forward. And any feedback or any recommendations, any guidance, any practical insight from any of you around the table will be instrumental at this stage of the project design. Thank you very much, Chair.
Well, thanks a lot, Aziza. Thanks a lot, Aziza, for this excellent overview of the work that we've been doing here in the OECD, and not only here in the OECD on the SDGs. And with that, I will give the floor to Eva Haagston, who is the chair of the WPTI, the Working Party for Territorial Indicators of the Regional Development Committee. And I would ask her to talk about the role of the WPTI in developing subnational SDG indicators and how this work has laid the foundation for global monitoring and therewith also for the global stocktake.
Thank you very much, Rudiger, and good morning, everyone. So I wanted to start by saying something about the OECD in general. You know, OECD has the long and good tradition of being a very well acclaimed actor in pulling together data, measuring data, developing data, finding data gaps, which all can be used for analytical work, proper analytical work, which in turn can be used for evidence-based policy suggestions. So this we, of course, continue to work on. So it's a very beneficial starting point also for the WPTI to take on the SDG with this very good tradition. So then the Agenda 2030, it is a global framework. So what do we do with this? As you may remember, you cannot simply start with global ideas and think that something happens. You have to bind it to somewhere. In this case, most of it has to be bound to a region, to a place. And this is why it's so particularly important with subnational indicators. Because if one region does not work on this at all, but a neighboring region does, we still have a problem. So we need to be able to measure at the subnatural level and see what is going on. And among the large amount of targets for the SDGs, a major part is indeed really place relevant or even dependent. And without these reliable subnational indicators, we cannot track what happens in the past, and we can also not try to make a forecast of what's going to happen, or for the sake of it, inform policy. So then is the question, maybe you're thinking, so what has the WPTI been doing up to now? Are they just talking, or are they actually doing something? So I would say there has been a lot of work on this issue. And there is a major thing is the localized indicator framework with a very nice visualizing tool where you can see for a large amount of functional urban areas across 46 OECD partners and countries, and how they are developing in for the different SDGs. This tool was initially launched in 2020 in connection with the World Urban Forum in Abu Dhabi. Now there is an update, and the most recent version of the tool has data up to 2022-2023. So we now have the opportunity to do a benchmark, not only across regions and countries, but also over time. And this is very important because this is what we want to catch if there is indeed an improvement over time. So what are the results we have seen so far? We have seen, unfortunately, that a large group of regions are not reaching any end target of SDGs, 39%, little bit sad. 24% reaches 2 or more. And there are no regions that have a hit on more than 4 SDGs. And now you remember they are 17. So this is a little bit problematic, but it is at least developing. So which targets of all then are the ones we are meeting or coming closer? Sustainable cities and communities. This is going reasonably well. This is SDG 11. An underlying explanation to this is declining air pollution in cities. There's a lot of efforts blocking cars, for instance, and delivery vans in several cities. In one of them I'm living in Stockholm, there is a proposed ban on all petrol cars in the inner city. It has not come into effect yet, but probably soon. Will make a mess for all the people, but the air will be very clean. I'm lucky I have a bike. And what are the challenges where we are doing the absolutely worst then? Responsible consumption does not look well, SDG 12. Climate action, SDG 13. This is the one most people are talking about, but it's also maybe the most complicated one to deal with. There is increasing waste, car dependency, and also maybe rising temperature. I now realized I forgot one of the good news. It is the SDG 17, partnership and enablers. You know, the digital infrastructure is very commonly considered an enabler. Broadband access. on this point, it's going well. Broadband internet speed. Some people do not need to commute anymore. You can work on a distance. You can have business services in any part of the world. You do not need to be on site. So this is also globalization for the sake of it. So these are some initial results, some good, some bad, but maybe it's going a little bit slow from my perspective. So what should we do now next to improve this? The OECD, and of course, under the lead of the WPTI, should continue to work on this. The data. See if there are more data needs or data gaps. Me, myself, I'm thinking a little bit about the firms, or more exactly the workplaces in regions, which we have not talked so much about. A lot of workplaces and firms do not have the administrative burden to report what they are doing on these actions. So this is maybe a data gap I have identified, which we can consider a little bit more about later, if we can find some indicators of what also the smaller firms or workplaces are doing. But then, of course, we have the collaboration with the UN Habitat. And here I see an opportunity that we can use our stock taking of the functional urban areas indicators and the UN Habitat's work on monitoring framework. If we can interact these with each other, I think we will have a much better monitoring and identifying tool. But still, I think there needs to be more work on also the gaps. Where do we really have a data lack? Not only a lack of improvement in the SDGs, but also in data, which we need to do evidence-based policy measures. So, to summarizing my little intervention here, things are going in the right direction in some corners, in others a little bit more slowly. The WPTI has a broad package already with tools and indicators to visualize what is going on, but this in itself maybe cannot change the development. But I would say by knowing what is going on, it maybe becomes more apparent to a larger group of people. So spread the information based on pure facts and evidence. This is an important aspect. I think I would like to stop there, and thank you very much for inviting me, and also thanks very much to my team who helped me with my presentation.
Thank you very much, Eva. I think it's been very precious to have the view from the Working Party on territorial indicators here in this discussion. So we will now first come to a panel discussion, and I'm very pleased to have a very distinctive and very impressive panel around me. And yeah, this is the slides coming. And then afterwards, we will also open the floor to the other participants for shorter interventions of 2 minutes. Already kind of like, if you want to intervene after the panel discussion, you know, you take your little flag and you put it up, and then I'll call upon you. And I would also, kindly ask the panel participants to stick to 5 minutes each, so that we have the chance to also give the possibility to intervene to the other participants of this roundtable here. And wanted to briefly introduce the participants in this panel. So I'm very pleased to have the permanent representative of Spain to the OECD, Ambassador Jimmy Puig. Welcome. And then we're having Anja Wagner, who is head of the Federal States and Local Authorities Division in the Ministry for Zusammenarbeit in Germany. Then we're having Gulnara Roll, who is the head of the Cities and Buildings Unit and working on climate change in the UNEP in Geneva. Then we're having Mayor Ricardo Rio, who is not only the mayor of Praga, but which is already very impressive, but also the rapporteur of the European Committee of Regions and Cities on the SDGs. Then we're having Mara Kosu, who is from Italy and responsible for sustainable development in the Ministry of the Environment and Energy Security. And last but not least, we're having Carrie Exton, our colleague from the OECD, who is from the Center on Wellbeing, Inclusion, Sustainable and Equal Opportunity, which we are usually abbreviating by WISE, which okay. It's a pleasure to have you here all with us. And with that, je vais donner la parole à Monsieur l'ambassadeur. L'Espagne, sorry, I should have said there is translation, so you all have headphones, so you can get them out. And if you need, I mean, you can use the translation. Monsieur l'ambassadeur, l'Espagne a été proactif pour soutenir la localisation des ODD, par exemple en accueillant le secrétariat de la coalition locale. Quelles sont les leçons d'une décennie de localisation d'ODD en Espagne et qu'est-ce qu'il reste à faire? Comment l'initiative jointe de l'OCDE et de l'UN Habitat pourra aider de développer l'agenda après 2030. Parole à vous. Merci beaucoup.
Bonjour, merci beaucoup pour votre invitation. L'agenda 2030 est universel, global et indivisible. Cependant, il ne peut être réalisé sans une territorialisation correcte de l'agenda. Il est essentiel que les acteurs locaux, qui sont les plus proches des citoyens et de leurs besoins, soient impliqués dans la réalisation de l'agenda 2030. En effet, une fois passé le quart de l'agenda 2030, et alors qu'il ne reste que 5 ans pour atteindre les objectifs convenus par tous en 2015, il est essentiel de mettre en œuvre les mécanismes d'accélération qui ont prouvé leur efficacité. Ces dernières années, ces réalités, l'atterrissage de l'agenda 2030 s'est révélé comme un véritable vecteur de changement. De plus en plus d'acteurs défendent ces réalités. Par ailleurs, l'action numéro 55 du pacte d'avenir reconnaît la nécessité de travailler et de s'aligner avec tous les acteurs impliqués afin de renforcer les objectifs partagés. Pour l'Espagne, la localisation des ODD est une priorité indiscutible, non négociable. En raison de nos principes constitutionnels et de nos structures territoriales fortement décentralisées, nous sommes l'exemple paradigmatique de la valeur ajoutée de la localisation. Nous appliquons également ces perspectives dans notre travail de coopération internationale au développement. Notre loi sur la coopération pour le développement durable et la solidarité mondiale reconnaît le rôle de la coopération décentralisée qu'elle considère comme l'une des caractéristiques et des forces de la coopération espagnole. De même, notre plan directeur pour la période 24-27 considère la dimension territoriale comme nécessaire pour accélérer la transformation proposée par l'agenda 2030. Notre force de défense de la localisation a été soutenue par nos actions au niveau international. Nous avons participé en plus haut niveau à des forums et des réunions internationales consacrées à ces questions. Nous travaillons en étroite collaboration avec le système de développement des Nations Unies pour renforcer l'action de la localisation. En collaboration avec les fonds conjoints pour les ODD, dont nous sommes la principale donateur, nous avons déployé des efforts considérables en matière de localisation. De fait, en 2030, comme vous avez dit, l'Espagne a participé à la conception, à la création et à l'approbation du tableau de bord de la localisation. Nous avons également travaillé en étroite collaboration avec UN Habitat pour établir le bureau du secrétariat de la coalition locale 2030 en Espagne. Depuis 2022, la ville de Bilbao accueille ce bureau, ce qui permet à la coalition locale 2030 d'accroître ses efforts pour canaliser la localisation des ODD. En outre, il existe, bien sûr, un déficit de financement pour les ODD qui doit être comblé, mais le manque d'accès aux ressources et au financement n'affecte pas tous les acteurs de la même manière. Les gouvernements régionaux et locaux sont confrontés aux plus grands défis en matière d'accès à un financement suffisant et durable. Pour cette raison, et en vue de la 4e conférence sur le financement du développement qui se tiendra à Séville, l'Espagne travaille sans relâche pour placer l'accès au financement pour les gouvernements régionaux et locaux au centre de l'agenda de financement. Tout cela montre le rôle proactif et de premier plan de l'Espagne dans ce domaine. Parmi les enseignements tirés, il est devenu évident que la participation active des gouvernements régionaux et locaux est essentielle pour adapter les ODD par le biais des transferts de compétences, car elle améliore la réponse et la conception des politiques publiques. Cependant, il reste des défis que nous devons continuer à relever et à contrer. Il est essentiel d'augmenter les investissements et l'accès au financement pour les acteurs régionaux et locaux. Il est également nécessaire d'améliorer le renforcement continu des capacités en termes de formation et de connaissances pour intégrer les ODD dans la conception des politiques publiques. Il faut améliorer la coordination institutionnelle dans les deux sens, d'haut en bas et de bas en haut. Enfin, améliorer les systèmes de suivi et d'évaluation et d'intégrer des perspectives multipartites et de multiniveaux dans les stratégies de mise en œuvre des ODD. L'Espagne félicite et salue votre initiative et surtout l'initiative conjointe de l'OCDE et l'UNO Habitat pour lancer pour aider les politiques, programmes et les actions futures des villes, des régions et des gouvernements nationaux afin de localiser les ODD. Cette initiative permettra non seulement de stimuler la localisation des ODD, mais aussi d'améliorer la mise en œuvre de cette initiative au cours des 5 prochaines années. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur l'ambassadeur. C'est très encourageant d'entendre que l'Espagne soutient très fortement les ODD et particulièrement au niveau local et régional et compte de le faire aussi dans le futur. Nous sommes très contents d'entendre ça. Merci beaucoup pour votre intervention. Now we are going to come to Germany, and I have the pleasure to give the floor to Anja Wagner. And I'd like you to talk about the role that Germany has played as a strong advocate for SDG localization, including for Germany's support for the voluntary local reviews. How does BMZ work with federal states and local authorities to support SDGs implementation, and what key lessons can be shared from this approach to inform global efforts on SDG localization by 2030 and beyond? The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm very pleased that I can give the example of Germany today in this very important conference. In all our development cooperation, the SDGs, of course, are the guiding goals and targets for every program commissioned by my ministry. In our DDC approach, specifically, we ask municipal partnerships to orient their work towards implementing the SDGs, and most partnerships be linked to often 3, 4, or sometimes even more of the 17 goals. There's a fertile ground to why these municipal partnerships are embedded in the Agenda 2030. German municipalities, of which some here are also present, and their associations have been strongly advocating for SDG implementation since 2015. This advocacy materializes in, for example, a self-declaration each German municipality can adopt, and more than 200 actually have to commit their action to serve global sustainability. These local resolutions pass local council and local parliament, thus making the commitment one shared by many, if not all, involved in the municipal politics. Municipal actors in Germany do not limit themselves proclaiming sustainability. They also went on to break it down to their very own context and set up a reporting framework which provides guidance on key indicators and actions required to make measures and measure progress. The so-called local sustainability reporting framework comprises of, for example, 19 mandatory indicators the municipality must collect information for. By doing so, their reporting goes beyond the internationally better known and already mentioned voluntary local review. Nevertheless, the voluntary local reviews offer German municipalities another entry point for becoming more sustainable. And my ministry supports many of them to develop the first VLRs and to present them at international fora such as the HLPF in New York. As to make the city's voice stronger in policy fora on the Agenda 2030, the next edition of Germany's voluntary national review will comprise of a cities chapter highlighting the role of local authorities for localizing the SDGs. The VNR will be presented in New York in June at the HLPF. A new trend in sustainability reporting that covers entire city and city regions or counties, showcasing that the sustainability agenda is a cross-municipal border affair. The same applies, by the way, then to municipal partnerships with the Global South, where counties or intermunicipal networks prove successful in co-managing projects with their southern counterparts. Given Germany is a federal system, we also see most of our 16 federal states running their own partnership programs with partners across the globe. With the so-called German Government and Federal States Program, the national level provides additional funding and advice to initiatives run on state level. And I see similarities here with our like-minded partners in Spain and Italy, which we may further explore to learn how to best use the federal system for development. To connect all levels of government engaged in SDG implementation and SDG partnership, we frequently convene stakeholders in so-called partnership conferences and in meetings of our DDC Advisory Council. Because we want to strengthen DDC long-term, we are working with OECD on a profound analysis on the impact achieving with municipal partnerships. In a global perspective, since you asked me for recommendations, I advocate that we use the term SDG localization as specific to the country context as possible. There may be a global debate on how to localize the SDGs, but ultimately localizing global goals stands and falls with the scope of functions that the municipalities have, and that standard is usually defined within national legal frameworks. In Germany, we have collected good experiences with the guarantee of self-government, where municipalities are guaranteed the right to regulate all local affairs on their own responsibility. In practice, this decentralized approach represents not so small advantage when entering the endeavor on localizing SDGs. But we also have challenges, some of which directly deriving from Germany's decentralized system approach. One of them is the availability and validity of data to monitor SDG implementation at local level. If we are talking about any post-2030 framework, let me make the point that Goal 70 on partnerships is regrettably mostly silent on city-to-city partnerships. Hopefully this will change with initiatives like the Local 2030 Coalition and with, of course, the member states of international organizations preparing a vision for the future. The next agenda may put local at the very beginning of its roadmap for implementation, avoiding the kind of rush we see now when implementing the current Agenda 2030 locally. Hence, my wish for the future would be to see global agendas becoming more mindful of the subnational actors. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Anja, both for kind of like giving us a very good overview about what Germany has been doing in the field, and also to drawing our attention to the important fact that obviously for the localization of SDGs, I mean, the capacities of municipalities and regions are also important in how far they can go in that direction, basically. We are now coming to the UNEP. So I'm very pleased to have Gulnara Roll with us. Gulnara, the Local 23 Coalition, I mean, as you probably all know, is the UN platform for the local implementation of the SDGs and to promote cooperation. And UNEP has been a very strong supporter and actor in this framework from the outset, and is also leading the working group, co-leading the working group on financing the localization of the SDGs. Now, if you're reflecting on the past and this work, could you share some key challenges and realities that need to be addressed in order to effectively localize the SDGs? And also, what policy recommendations do you believe are critical for fostering more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable development?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And indeed, United Nations Environment Programme, and actually, Mr. Chairman, actually our climate change division of UNEP is in Paris, which probably demonstrates actually the strong commitment of the government of France to working on the climate change. So we're actually very happy to be working with you, but we should be meeting more often in person as well. I think it's a bit of heritage of the last COVID years when we're working a lot online. Indeed, as already informed, that at one hand, I'm representing UNEP and I'm head of unit, but also I'm the acting chief of the mitigation branch of the climate change division at UNEP. But I am also here with the head of the Local 2030 Coalition. The coalition is indeed a very strong coalition of 14 UN agencies and 10 other organizations, but also with a very wide platform of local and subnational authorities. And we're trying to do in the Local 2030 Coalition really work differently. We are trying to work in a very agile way, so not the usual UN style. And this is where we also really enjoy also working with OECD on some of the expert products and also towards Financing for Development Conference. Maybe I will just say a few words about our next events for FFD later on. So really happy to represent UNEP, but also our colleagues, because UNEP, together with United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, and UNICEF, we are also leading the working group on local financing. And then, Mr. Chairman, the question is about the challenges. I think I will second, the intervention of Spain and Germany, that one of the key issues is really the access of the local government financing. And this is what is our Local 2030 working group on localization of financing is actually focusing on. And this is where all our UN agencies are actually bringing our knowledge, our projects, our ideas together. And we're really working as a kind of as a family in this, and because this really helps us to make much larger impact. But let me first of all just say a few words about what UNEP is bringing to the table with the localization SDGs. In terms of the concept, I think very much aligned with what Aziza mentioned, that we, of course, as UNEP, we're working on multiple environmental and climate-related SDGs, like just mentioned 3, 6, 7, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And at UNEP also working across the house. So of course, UNEP is working first of all at a national level because historically lots of environmental issues are addressed and regulated at the national level. However, as we see of the last decade's trend, so much of the implementation going on at the local level, just maybe to give some of the local 2030 kind of numbers, that 62% of SDG targets and 70% of the climate solutions are within subnational jurisdictions. And so therefore, subnational governments are extremely important in implementation. And this is why at UNEP, in addition to having just a unit for cities, we established a cluster for cities. So we are bringing expertise on local government from across the house. So we're about 50 people looking on local low carbon cities, building materials, urban transport, to make this difference. But working in a family of local 2030 is even more important because then we bring a capacity of many, many different organizations. Of course, where UN Habitat is co-chair, and we also have bilateral cooperation with UN Habitat and the Greener Cities Partnership. So speaking about some of the activities that UNEP is already working on, for instance, one of the projects is under SDG 14 and 15. So we're localizing this work through nature-based solutions and urban planning solutions. It's a generation restoration project, and it's good to speak after Anya because it's project funded by BMZ, which is very successful with 23 cities. And what we do on the financing is we're doing kind of a local finance incubator. So we're trying to help the local innovators, local startups in the countries, of course, mostly in the developing countries and countries with emerging economy, like Africa, Latin America, Asia, trying to find local stakeholders who are working already on urban agriculture, gardening, nature-based solutions to improve climate adaptation, and trying to develop their capacity and then connect them to the investors. So we're doing this, we pilot this, and we would like to bring it to the larger group through the local 2030 coalition. On the SDG 11, which is looking into energy, we're working on urban energy system, looking into the local energy planning. So this is where I would like to bring very concrete project funded by Italian government. We're working at the moment in cities in Ukraine, where, as you know, many of the central power plants were destroyed during the war. So we're trying to develop very innovative solutions for the local decentralized energy using renewables, but also bringing the whole chain together. So we're happy also to work with others to scale up this work. Another very exciting project, Empower Women for Climate Resilient Societies. We're working together with UN Women, with the support of the governments of Germany, New Zealand, Sweden, Switzerland, to strengthen, to bring really the local women's group. We're working with national banks to provide to women at the local level an opportunity to use more climate neutral equipment, energy efficient equipment, cooling equipment, so that we really support on the large scale transition to low carbon sustainable development. So today afternoon, there will be another presentation on SDG 12 of UNEP work on the food waste and food waste breakthrough, which is to be launched at the COP30. So it's a lot is being done. So I think UNEP is piloting quite a lot of this kind of innovative financing solution, but as discussed already, this needs to be very much scaled up. And through the local 2030 working group on innovative financing, this is what we are doing. And you see this on the screen. So we developed a policy brief with kind of our program of kind of key topics. And we're going with this to the FFD. So if you are in New York at the end of April at the preparatory meeting for the FFD, if you are at the Financing for Development conference in June in Sevilla, please get in touch with us. We're happy to, we will be organizing events to promote kind of our key messages, but while key messages that you see on your screen here are very kind of high level, as already demonstrated, UNEP is bringing quite a lot on this, but also other certain agencies also bringing a lot to this. And based on the cooperation Local 2030, we're also very happy to work with many other partners in the CHAMP, in Surge, but also with SDG Urban Commission, which have meeting tomorrow. So I think two issues of financing and scaling up and working together, we're already addressing them, and we are looking forward through maybe this meeting also to continue doing so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gunara, for this excellent overview of the issues around financing of the SDGs at the local level. And I've now the pleasure to give the floor to Mayor Ricardo Rio. I would like to ask you, in your role as rapporteur on the SDGs for the European Committee of the Regions, what key lessons and remaining challenges should be considered for the post-2030 agenda? And as Mayor of Braga, how do you see the role of cities in driving global SDG implementation?
Thank you, Chairman. And first of all, let me thank the OECD for the invitation to participate in this panel, and also to greet Aziz and all the team for these amazing OECD Urban Days that I hope are repeated in the future. Let me say to start with that if we look at the global situation, comparing with the moment when we set the SDGs, we can say that we had a success. We have improved in most all indicators in most all territories. But obviously, if we look at the reality ahead, and that we are conscious that we will probably miss most of the indicators, the statistics were already presented in all the territories, this is obviously a failure. And whatever effort we put in the achievement of the goals throughout these latest 5 years, we won't achieve those goals in most of the areas. And so that's a failure. But on the other side, I think that apart from that failure, we had a bigger failure overall, which was the communication dimension. We didn't manage up until today to value the SDGs and to spread the word on the SDGs as a useful tool, as something that could bring an advantage to the communities, to the territories, to the people. Because when we talk about the SDGs, we are talking about improving the well-being in our communities. We are talking about improving the quality of life of our citizens. And they are still looked as something that is a burden, an administrative burden, a collection of indicators, something that is not useful for the people that we manage and that we serve. And when we, for instance, recently were shocked to see the United States announce that they will drop the following of the SDGs, before that, the other global stakeholders didn't value the SDGs as much as they should. The European Union, for instance, has long before lost the presence of the SDGs in their narratives, in most of the speeches, in the official speeches, at the level of the European Commission, at the level of the European Parliament, not at the level of the Committee of the Regions, because as I will mention, the localization is very present and very active, and the Committee of the Regions is the headquarters of the cities and regions of Europe. But in all the other dimensions, the presence was very sparse. If we look, for instance, at the natural recovery and resilience plans that each of the member states developed after the pandemic, the reference to the SDGs was also very few. And so even at the national level, and no matter work that has been done to develop national voluntary reviews, the presence in the narrative, in the political narrative of the SDGs is still very small. And that is to say that we missed something. And the fact is that at the local level, the reality is the opposite. And for instance, the Committee of the Regions has worked with the OECD throughout the pandemic and make a lot of service. And we saw that all over Europe, we have more and more cities using the SDGs as a tool to improve the management of our territories and to monitor the achievements that we can make. Because we can't separate the goals from the monitoring and the capacity to show the results and the improvements that we are attaining. And the fact is that we have the data gap that Aziza mentioned in her intervention. And for instance, at the level of the European Committee of the Regions, we have been working a lot, for instance, with Eurostat, and they have now worked to develop specific regional statistics. We have been working together with the European Commission Joint Research Center, and they are also working together with us in order to strengthen the localization of the SDGs and the provision of data. But at national level, there's still a lot of weaknesses in the data that we can access. The fact is that the cities are using this tool and are spreading the word. It's very important, the Local 2030 Coalition. It's very important, for instance, projects like the Urbact project on the SDGs and the Sustainable Development Goals that we have, for instance, engaging cities like Mannheim, Tallinn, and the others that are here represented. Because we are sharing best practices and we are showing how we can bring the SDGs to improve the quality of management of our territories. In Braga, for instance, we have been using the SDGs since the beginning of my first term in 2013. We have been monitoring the SDGs yearly with a report that is produced together with an academic institution, the Catholic University, which has a specific research center to support us on this. And we have been very transparent in showing the results and seeing how we have improved in this performance. This is also a challenge because most of the politicians don't like to show failures. And obviously, to show the concrete data in each of the goals, it's also a way to show that we are not performing so well in some of the areas. And that's also a challenge in terms of the public opinion and in terms of the political discussion on this. On top of that, I think that the fact is that we, as managers of a territory, are conscious that we can't address a goal on its own. We have to work together for economic growth. I'm one of the champion mayors of inclusive growth here at the OECD, and that's the whole message, that we can't just work for prosperity. We need to work also for social fairness. We need to work for environmental care. We have to work in establishing partnerships with our stakeholders locally. And the SDGs gives us all this. And whatever you may name it, whatever the future of the SDGs will be, we need this type of tool because that's an holistic approach that shows how we balance and how we manage to address all these topics at the same time in each of our territories. And finally, there's the financial issue. And it has already been very mentioned today that we need more resources. We need more financial instruments to support the investments that we are making. It is very important to have initiatives like the SDSN Global Commission for Urban SDGs Finance, and I greet also Eugenie Bush, which is here, and it's one of the leaders of this coalition, because this type of work can obviously improve the solutions, and the share of best practices also in that dimension is very, very important. But from my perspective, as for my city, I think that we have been benefiting a lot from this use of the SDGs. We have been able to mobilize all the local stakeholders because we have a Sustainable Development Council in which many stakeholders are represented, where we define the strategy, where we define the initiatives that we have to develop, and where we present the results and monitor the results that we are achieving. And that's obviously very, very useful. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for these very clear and very thoughtful remarks from the view of our mayor, basically. So I think that's been extremely useful for everybody here. So now we will come to Italy. Mara Kossu. Italy has shown strong leadership in advancing the SDG localization, and in particular through the launch of the partnership platform on localizing the SDGs during its G7 presidency. With the focus on multi-level governance and policy coherence, how is the platform supporting better alignment between national strategies and local actions in the coming years, and which synergies do you see between the G7 platform and the OECD UN Habitat joint initiative, about which we talked already this morning?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here. It's really a pleasure to be here discussing the crucial role of localizing the SDGs of cities and territories, particularly in a perspective which goes beyond 2030, stressing the importance, the persistent importance of locals and territories in localizing whatever we call, as the Major was saying, the interlinkages among the social, economic, and environmental dimension, particularly in these times of multiple crises. So the partnership platform for localizing the SDGs, as you said, was launched by the G7 Italian presidency in 2024. We signed a memorandum of understanding with UN Habitat last year, at the end of last year, and we are now operationalizing the contents and the membership of the platform. It has been built by design in a collaborative way. It builds on the results of a high-level discussion in HLPF in 2024 in July, and we tried to shape the contents of the partnership platform in really to design it as an operational hand for Local 2030 coalition, meaning that while the Local Coalition is a UN system initiative, we try to work on the ground to make it happen by piloting in 2 African countries, now Senegal and Tunisia. So working in a multi-level perspective. The partnership platform has a national perspective. We provide and work with UN Habitat for providing national frameworks for localizing the SDGs. It has a global perspective by providing peer learning exchanges and global discussions on what works and what does not. Because apart from best practices, we need to know, and in this respect, the global Stocktake can be crucial. We need to know what has not worked yet and why and where, because context is relevant. So depending on where we are working and what we are doing where, the Stocktake can really give us back some feedback, which is relevant to our activities. And then we work at local level. Means that through localizing the national frameworks, we try to pioneer some pilot initiatives with high impact on social and environmental dimension. The relevance of the partnership platform for localizing the SDGs, in our view, is the combination among the policy coherence for sustainable development tools and mechanisms. So we're talking about target 17.14.1, which is one of the main means that 2030 agenda provides, and which is now, thanks to the OECD work, been producing some guidelines and some practical mechanism and tools. Italy, together with the OECD, delivered the first national action plan on policy coherence for sustainable development, which has been designed and combined with our territories and with our stakeholders and right holders. And now another technical support instruments funded by the European Commission, by the DG reform of the European Commission, is funding a localizing project for Italian regions to provide all the elements to implement at territorial level the national plan for policy coherence for sustainable development. What does this mean to the partnership platform? It means that what we are trying to do is to share the way we work at national level, at international level, providing the combination among PCSD and localizing methods, bringing out synergies and using collaboration as a working method, which is precisely what we are trying to do here with the global Stocktake among OECD and UN Habitat. And this is crucial to Italian experience, and I think that it could be also crucial at global experience, because we need to work on what we have already done and to build on that, not restarting the wheel each time we work. What Italy has been doing in terms of involvement of local territories is quite relevant, because it builds on an environmental code, which is from 2010, that provides the necessity for regions and territories to contribute directly to national sustainable development objectives, requiring an integrated monitoring to see and assess if and how they are reaching the objectives and they are contributing to this achievement. This means that also at national level, we are working through an integrated monitoring framework, such as the one that the global Stocktake would like to work to, combining and making synergies among the different frameworks that the OECD and UN Habitat had already put in place. And also we are trying to combine indicators from the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. As the Major was saying, there were no direct mentioning of the work done on 2030 agenda within the NRRP. So we are trying to combine this kind of work with the structural funds indicator with our national indicators for well-being within our national document for economic and finance, which means then we are trying at national level to bring synergies among different databases to build a common set of indicators for assessing the achievement of sustainable development objectives, which is the same thing that we are trying to do with the global Stocktake, and which is quite relevant in order to orient and drive also municipalities and regions to have a common method and measurement devices to assess how we are working, which is because it's key to collaborate. We cannot collaborate if we do not share the same information and if you don't share the same means. So in a word, still collaboration, coordination has been key in Italian experience. This is why we try to combine them with a policy coherence for sustainable development approach and to put it forward into the partnership platform for localizing the SDGs. So in this perspective, we really welcome the Global Stocktake initiative and looking forward to work together to that. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Mara, for this very interesting overview of what Italy is doing in this dimension. Our last panelist, Carrie Axton, will now tell us about innovations with the OECD Hub on Sustainable Development Goals. Carrie, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Rudiger. So I'm going to very quickly introduce some parallel work on SDGs at the OECD WISE Centre. So as Rudiger mentioned, this year we launched the OECD Hub on Sustainable Development Goals. And this is an interactive web platform where you can explore all of the collective OECD data on the SDGs. So this platform builds on a report that we've been producing at the OECD since 2016, which is called Measuring Distance to the SDG Targets. So the goal of the hub is to provide an overview of OECD countries' performance right across the 169 targets that are embedded in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So as I say, we put together all of the data in one place to give a very high-level overview, a holistic picture of strengths and weaknesses right across the 2030 agenda for each OECD country. One novel element of our work is a dynamic analysis that uses evidence based on past trends to try and understand whether countries are on track to meet the targets by 2030. And part of the website is also dedicated to highlighting critical data and measurement gaps. So both targets we can't yet measure on the one hand, and targets where we can measure, but that we're missing data for critical OECD countries. Where we can, we also really try and go beyond national averages to offer a view of progress for different population groups. So for example, we've published work on progress towards the SDGs for children and for men and women. And we're progressively working to add new layers to this analysis. And I think it's very complementary to the sort of subnational analysis that's also done at the OECD. So why is any of this useful in this context? Why am I here talking about national analysis? Well, as we've heard, local action is the engine that drives national performance on SDGs. So in a way, this tool is showing you the aggregate result. It's offering a reliable national benchmark. So we're using internationally agreed indicators that are aligned with the UN Global Indicator Framework, complemented with OECD data sets where necessary to offer greater coverage and granularity. But what this is doing is giving a comprehensive picture right down to the target level of what is happening at the national level in OECD countries. So if you want to understand how your local area is stacking up compared to the national picture, this is giving you a standardized view across OECD countries. The work is also providing methods. So it's a way of illustrating how to operationalize and quantify targets so that you can understand how to measure distance from targets, again, using an agreed and comparable set of methods. So at the local level, it's really well understood that you can supplement these national and global indicators with much richer information, or indeed you might be struggling to develop indicators, but either way, what the OECD Hub is giving you is a solid national baseline that is comparable across countries. I think the other thing to highlight here is that we do have this comparative element to this work. So it gives you a sense of what's possible to achieve given countries' starting points, circumstances, and policy settings. So if, for example, you're looking to set some interim milestones that might be realistic on the path towards SDG achievement, then the evidence that we have in the OECD Hub might help you do that by showing how far others have come, at least at the national average level, as well as the predicted path to 2030. Finally, our work highlights where collective efforts can yield dividends. So that might be aspects of SDG performance where many countries are struggling. And here I would highlight the stalled progress or regression on 60% of targets on goals such as Partnership for the Goals, so Goal 17, Zero Hunger, Goal 2, Quality Education, Goal 4, Decent Work and Economic Growth, Goal 8, and Peace, Justice and Strong Institutions, Goal 16. So there's a lot of work to do, and actually in many cases at the national level, we're seeing movement that is either stalled or heading backwards, and this is with 5 years left on the clock. Collective efforts can also be important in areas where we still have big data gaps, including at the national level. So again, if we look at Goal 17, Partnerships for the Goals, and Goal 9, Industry, Innovation, Infrastructure, even at the national level, we are missing data to assess at least 50% of the targets. So again, 5 years from the end date, we are still struggling to monitor in many cases. And I think both of these illustrate where we have even more reasons to come together in these sorts of environments to share experiences and learn lessons from one another, both at the national and the local level.
Thanks a lot, Carrie. I mean, I also find the idea of looking at the SDGs for different groups of the population. I think that's a very interesting idea also to take forward maybe at the local level. With that now, we will open the floor. We need to reduce the time for that period a bit because we're running a bit late. But if you want like to intervene, though, please, raise your flag as suggested before. And please stick to 2 minutes. I see. I can't read your flag, but you were the first. So Turkey, and then afterwards. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and distinguished participants. I will share with you the work Turkey has done to achieve sustainable development goals and approach we have adopted at the local level. The Socio-Economic Development Index is a significant index designed to measure socio-economic development levels of provinces in Turkey. This study serves as a key guide in the design and implementation of our support programs for the regions. To date, a total of 8 studies have been conducted province-based, and currently a new study is underway with updated data. In this latest study, a total of 52 variables are being used to provide a more comprehensive analysis. As Turkey, we have adopted an indicator-based approach to monitor and measure the sustainable development goals at the local level. In this context, one of the variables used in this study is the proportion of public open space. This variable is directly related to SDG goal of sustainable cities and communities. The proportion of public open space is an important indicator that enhances urban quality of life and supports social inclusivity. Additionally, we have aligned the preliminary feasibility studies on the investment support platform with the sustainable development goals. This platform is an important tool to promote regional development. Finally, we aim to contribute to the achievement of various sustainable development goals by providing support within the scope of the So Green project. This project will make significant contributions to the Turkey's achievement of environmental sustainability and social development goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Turkey. Siegfried? Thank you very much. My name is Siegfried Brenke. I was working with OECD from 87 to 91 as head of the Urban Affairs Division at that time, based or placed in the Environment Directorate at that time. And I would like to just make a few words on what Aziza mentioned when she pointed to the blind spots that are surrounding us. And my question actually is, why don't we turn the spotlights on? And the spotlights would be, for example, making energy consumption visible. And courageous mayors could start in their city hall on the marketplace to make the energy consumption of city halls, schools, and other public buildings visible on the moment, every moment. That could also be shown on the internet, of course. And it would bring the facts close to population. And we would be talking about facts. This energy efficiency is not visible, so you have to make it visible. Actually, we tried that in practice with a GIZ project in Bavaria in 2008. And we measured the consumption of street lighting, energy consumption in street lighting, and put it on a big monitor on the marketplace and compared the consumption of electricity in street lighting of last night to 1 year before. And he said it was so much before and this is so much now. We saved so much dinars and we saved so much CO2. And it was a very enlightening thing to see the school kids standing in front of these panels and watching the figures. And I think that energy is just the easiest example, of course, of bringing transparency into the game. And of course, it needs a lot of courage. That's clear. Transparency is not liked by many, but it is a necessary thing to do if we want to be talking about facts. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Siegfried. Ministry of Cities, Brazil.
Thank you. So Brazil has resumed the National Commission of SDG in the last 2 years. About localization, we are working on program My Municipality for the SDG to inform and sensibilize the new mayors that started the mandate this year. What we notice is that in general, the new mayors understand this is an international agenda and not an instrumental agenda to achieve their goals. So I would like to ask if there is any experience here to engage new mayors on this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Japan.
Thank you for chairperson. Thank you for chairperson. So I'm a Japanese national government member as Housing Beautiful. All of the SDGs goals are worthy matters to be considered, especially in terms of goal 11, which is directly related to housing and urban policies. Japan has been facing the problem of population aging and the increase of the amount of single-person households. That would lead to challenges to secure housing for vulnerable groups such as elderly people and low-income earners. We believe that these matters present a challenge not only for us, but also for each country now or soon in the future. Japan has been dealing with these issues as the public policies and private sector have continuously been working. We'd like to make points that it is crucial to provide a variety of support to both landlords and tenants. At this point, we believe that not only the national government and private sector, but also all the local governments need to address problems of residents of risk of staying without housing, while effectively utilizing human resources and infrastructure to determine how to create our cities of the future. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sciences Po.
Hello, and thank you very much. I will try to make it very short. I'm an architect. My background is architecture, and in my work, I always try to see what is the overarching goal and to understand a bit on what we are building. And you need to understand very well the terrain. And so my question would revolve around the communication problem. So I believe that I see here in the SDGs a problem of communication, how it is perceived by the public, by the citizens. Maybe it will make sense at one point to try to find some fewer or overarching goals that could contain all the others, so it would be easier for people to understand them, because looking at 17 goals, it's a bit complicated. I mean, people don't even reach the fourth. They just read the first three and then, okay, it's complicated. So, so yeah, my question would be around communication and how can we measure this communication, if we can find any indices of how yeah, I'm sorry, I got, but yeah, I think it's important to measure it. We don't have any way to quantify the communication with the public, so that would be my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very valid question, but that's also like the $1 million question to solve. I would close the round now and would give the floor to Mayor Braga.
Thank you, Rodrigo. I'll stick to the question that came from the Minister of Brazil on the capacity to mobilize other cities. I already mentioned in my early intervention the importance of these networks that we have and the share of best practices. And I will add another dimension, which is, for instance, at the SDSN, we are creating a lab for spreading the use of the SDGs in the Portuguese-speaking countries. So there's a capacity that I think we can activate to create some sort of mentoring for cities to cities. So the cities that are already very engaged in this topic can be some sort of tutors for other cities in terms of the use of the SDGs and the benefits that they may bring. Also, this is linked with another dimension that I think is very important, which is the capacity building, because we talked about data, we talked about the financing, but it's still lagging a lot of capacity building in the local and regional structures, so that we can obviously strengthen the use of the SDGs also at the level and to strengthen the localization of the SDGs. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ricardo. So we are coming to the use moment. So we are very pleased to have the intervention of Aissatou from Leonardo da Vinci University.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Aissatou Sissavane. I hold a master's degrees in geography, development geography, and from University Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne, and an MBA in urban transition management from University Leonardo da Vinci. My academic and professional journey has focused on urban mobility and planning, particularly in developing cities. The Sustainable Development Goals, and especially Goal 11, on sustainable cities, aim to build inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable urban environment. Today, cities in developing countries face major challenges in terms of mobility, like unequal access to public transportation, lack of active modes such as walking and cycling, road safety issues, and the financial burden of accessing transport services. And these challenges are especially critical for vulnerable populations such as children or the elders, whose right to mobility is often restricted. In response, ambitious projects are being launched to improve transport services and open up underserved areas. For example, in Dakar, in Senegal, I worked on two major projects, the regional express train and the BRT, donc bus rapid transit system, and both designed to ease congestion and promote more equitable mobility. However, this project also highlights the need to consider their long-term sustainability and social inclusion. During a recent trip to Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, I witnessed the rapid transformation of this West African metropolis. The construction of its first metro line is a major step forward, yet challenges remain, particularly in terms of governance and the inclusion of informal or marginalized neighborhoods. Addressing these issues requires a holistic approach that integrates road safety, public space planning, and social inclusion to avoid deepening inequalities. To ensure the success of this project, a systemic approach is essential, one that combines infrastructure development, coherent public policies, and citizen participation. Indeed, local residents being the primary stakeholders and are best positioned to express their needs and priorities. Their involvement leads to fairer, more context-specific and sustainable solutions. To conclude, to achieve SDGs, especially Goal 11, it's important to act at the local level, combining infrastructure development, targeted public policies, and awareness-raising initiatives. This is how we can build cities that are truly resilient, inclusive, and equipped to meet today's urban challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aissatou. And for the end of the sessions, I have the great pleasure to give the floor to Professor Veneri for concluding remarks. So the idea is to bring together the key messages from the discussion and link them to your own distinguished work on regional and urban sustainable development. Paulo, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, for the honor to speak at the end of this session. We'll be very short for the time constraints, but let me just make a couple of considerations. I would highlight three main aspects of this from this discussion. The first one is probably the most obvious, and is the irreplaceable role of regions and cities on the path towards SDGs. It has been said that most SDGs require local action. This makes subnational government crucial implementers of SDGs. Including because cities and regions are actually de facto laboratories for testing initiatives, for testing things that work on the ground to then achieve higher objectives. Almost everyone who spoke demonstrated the role of subnational government of regions and cities, including, for example, international organizations like UNEP, idea of creating clusters for cities within their organizations, because these are particular objects. No? When we talk about place, you mix all policy domains and all levels of government together in one place, and it is important to be very coordinated. And that's really the effort and the challenge of working at this level. It has also said that, in a sense, there's been a communication failure. And that actually I agree with the Mayor Rio. Global attentions to SDG may have waned amid competing crises in the last period. But this, to look at the positive side, we should look at this giving to cities and regions a renewed momentum, a renewed leadership, because they will be taking the lead to actually progress towards SDGs, given that there are, as I said, competing crises that push down from the agenda, the discussion about SDGs. And as said by Aziz at the beginning of this discussion, SDGs are not that actually what subnational governments do necessarily from the beginning, but they use it. They use as a framework to guide their action, because they have specific priorities. Everyone, every city, every region, they have their specific priorities. But the SDG is a framework to be used to then be more effective. That's the idea, I think, and that's why also the SDGs, especially from the subnational perspective, can be valued more for their transformative potential, not just let's say in the conventional way of looking at the indicators. But I mean, that's the challenge. In this respect, the OECD UN Habitat Initiative can actually be useful to empower local leaders to stimulate collective learning among people who participate in this initiative. I close also, I mean, the second point would be about multi-level governance, policy coherence, the challenges, barriers, and opportunities that have emerged here. And I mean, it has been clear that problems of misalignment in policy orientations, fiscal administrative capacities, lack of capacity overall, as suggested by mayors of Braga, these are all aspects, and financial constraints, these are all aspects that are hampering the progress towards SDGs. But there are initiatives and experiences like Italy's, Spain, through the voluntary local reviews, Germany, intermunicipal cooperation, that highlight different initiatives to stimulate cooperation across levels of government, but also horizontally across local governments. Final point is on data monitoring and I would say innovation, because the initiative that the OECD and the UN Habitat are making is actually can be groundbreaking, because they are combining two measurement frameworks which are already internationally recognized, and this is really can allow to scale up the initiative and become the global standard, I would say, to really measure the progress on SDGs, on the localization, or let's say on the subnational part. Having reliable indicators, having comparable indicators at the local level can help the implementation, turning also the policy objectives that we have into concrete actions. I mentioned also the word innovation because I want to note the fact that this initiative will also make use of new tools, new innovating tools, like, for example, the AI and foresight analysis. All these aspects actually can be very important for the success of this initiative. Of course, there are risks, such as ethical risks, such as algorithmic bias, data sovereignty. All these aspects should be taken into account when using these tools. But overall, I think that if that OECD UN Habitat Initiative managed to do so, will not just advance on the measurement of progress, but actually it will really accelerate it on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paolo, for this very inspiring conclusions. And with that, I will be closing this session. I'd like to thank all the intervenants. I'd like to thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And also thank you to all the panelists, speakers, and all the participants here in the session. I also want to quickly thank all those who are behind the scenes, made this session possible and happen. And the coffee drink is outside.